how do patients pick a doctor? How do they know who to go to, where to go first? For example, I'm an emergency room physician. A lot of times people will come in for a sprained ankle and they're like, oh my gosh, while I have you, can you look at my rash? Can you talk to me about my diabetes? Can you talk to me about my blood pressure? And it's fine. We're physicians, we're trained to manage those things, but maybe that's not the right place, right? I have with me today Dr. Nicole Rochester, a pediatrician and an independent health advocate who helps patients and their families navigate the healthcare system, and Dr. Felecia Sumner, who is a board-certified family medicine physician and a wellness strategist who helps patients get to the root cause of their illnesses. Thanks for coming on today, guys. With maybe when you're in the ER, that's not the place to manage your high blood pressure and diabetes. Maybe you should be at another doctor, or maybe the primary is not the place for a different problem. So how do you guys kind of advise patients, because they're not in healthcare? So where do they start? How do they pick a doctor, in a realistic way? Dr. Rochester, if you want to go first.
Sure. So I always recommend that they start with word of mouth. I think just like if you see someone out in the street and their hair looks good and you're like, hey sis, who did your hair? Same thing. And so I recommend that people start with their close circle. Ask your friends, ask your coworkers, ask your church members, your family members. And of course you want to make sure they like this person, but start with them and say, hey, do you have a gynecologist that you like? Do you have a primary care doctor that you like? Do you have a cardiologist? Whatever it is that you're in need of. And, that person can really give you the scoop about how the office runs and, whether they think the doctor spends an adequate amount of time, all those things. Outside of that, I think if you already have a primary care doctor and you're looking for a specialist, I definitely recommend that individuals talk to their primary care doctor, because we know kind of the inside scoop on certain physicians. And while we don't like to throw our colleagues under the bus, we could politely steer you in a different direction if you were thinking of someone who we think may not be a good fit for one reason or another. So those are just two things that I think can be helpful. I don't recommend just going straight to Google or Health Grades or some of those other websites. That can be later in the search process.
Yeah, I fully agree that asking someone directly would be the best bet. My Google reviews are on point, but it doesn't mean that it always is accurate. Mine are, but they're not always accurate. So it is helpful to speak with someone who knows that doctor firsthand, whether as a patient or as a doctor colleague. But it's also important, I think, when you're trying to choose a doctor, to think about what values do you need them to align with. So some patients, you might be perfectly fine with just about anyone, and that's totally okay. There are some people who would really prefer a doctor who is more holistic in their approach and might not always write a prescription right away. So it's good to ask those questions before you book an appointment with that doctor. Some doctors, it might matter to you what their, race or gender is, whether or not they can relate to you completely about certain societal issues or woes. So those are things that you should also take into account.
Sorry, I just want to bring up the insurance piece, because I have so many friends, families, clients that don't do that research first, and then they get hit with an unexpected bill. So, sometimes you may find who you think is going to be the doctor of your dreams, and then you go to your insurance website and you find out that they are not within network. So, that if that's your decision, that's fine. Some people choose to see doctors out of network because they're just that great, but you need to at least understand that decision and the financial implications.
No, that's perfect. That's actually what I was going to bring up, is what happens when you are looking for a new physician and, like you said, the perfect person for you doesn't take your insurance. Is there anything that they can do? Can they, make an appeal? I know that a lot of times with Medicaid, for example, I know in some communities it's difficult to get in maybe to certain providers because the ones that take it either are too few or there's just so many patients. Do they have any leeway at that point where they can apply for some special consideration?
It depends. I think with private insurance, what a lot of people don't know is that sometimes paying the cash price as if you are uninsured can actually be cheaper than paying the out-of-network price for your insurance company. So if you do have a doctor and you just really want to see that particular doctor and they're not in network, you could talk to the doctor or their billing person and say, how much would you charge me just for a cash visit, or as if they're uninsured. And in many cases, that's going to be cheaper than going through your insurance company. If you have a government-sponsored health plan like Medicaid or Medicare, then you're really kind of stuck. I mean, I think, you are probably going to end up having to pay out of pocket, which may end up being a significant burden.
And so what about the person that moves to a new place? So maybe they don't have word of mouth at their disposal. They don't have a church yet. They literally just showed up with a moving truck yesterday, and you know what? I have all these meds that need refills. I need to find a doctor. Where do they start? Because some people will say, oh, call the number on the back of your insurance card and get the list of doctors from there. What do you suggest they do in that case?
Well, I think similarly, an option that sounds virtually like word of mouth would be to consider a Facebook group, or there's an app called Nextdoor, which a lot of people use. It's like a virtual community type of thing. I think that that's an easy way for you to be able to still get a vouched testimony about a doctor personally. There are a lot of practices called direct primary care practices, not specifically to plug anything, but these practices are all over the country, and they are typically always ready and able to see patients through a membership-based type of practice. So those are easy to look up, direct primary care near me, and they operate with or without insurances. So there are a bunch of ways, but I think even checking into your virtual community is helpful.
That's a great idea. And if you do have to use the insurance company's directory, I really like going to their website. And in many cases, they will have photos of the doctors. They usually have, a very brief bio. So like Dr. Sumner mentioned earlier, if you want a woman or if you want someone of a particular race or ethnicity, you can kind of ascertain that by looking at their picture. You can see where they went to school, and sometimes you can figure out their age or an approximate age if they have the dates of when they graduated. And of course, people can look good on paper and not necessarily have great bedside manner and things like that. So I guess the other thing I just want to mention is that it may take you a few tries to find the doctor that you really like. If you've just moved and you have multiple prescriptions, as you said, Dr. Ty, and you need to get those filled and you need to at least bridge the gap, then you may end up just having to pick someone based on convenience, based on, their location relative to your home or your job. And then if you go and you don't like them, you can always change. I think a lot of people don't realize you can change your doctor.
Absolutely.
People complain about their doctor, and they've been going there for 10 years. And I'm like, why haven't you changed your doctor?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh.
Exactly. And that brings you to my next question, which is, what happens if you don't like your doctor, or what happens if you disagree with your doctor's plan?